Thank you everyone for coming along this afternoon. It's lovely to have you all here. My name's Cameron Brown. I'm the Venues and Companies Manager at Brighton Fringe. Speaking of Brighton Fringe, oh my God, it's happening. It's so fun. It's really it's going well. We're having a good time. The weather's holding out, and as part of the Fringe Academy series of workshops that we do year round, including during the festival as well, this is one of them we'll be presenting this evening, which is Rural Touring with the National Rural Touring Forum. I didn't trip up, that usually trips me up, but I managed to get through that. It's the NRTF, which is a fantastic organization that you're going to hear a little bit more about. We've got some members of the NRTF which who are going to speak and share some pearls of wisdom, and you can also ask some questions at the end. If you need anything during the workshop, just drop it in the chat and I'll try my best. I'm going to pass over to Holly now, and yeah, we'll take it from there. Welcome, Holly. Welcome all.
Thank you, Cameron. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being here in Zoom person, and thank you if you are watching this on demand as well. It's really great to be part of the Brighton Fringe Academy, presenting all things rural touring. So my name's Holly and I'm the director of the National Rural Touring Forum, and I am joined by some colleagues. So Hattie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Hattie. I am just going to the role of membership manager. I started with the NRTF in January. I'm also an artist outside of this, so I'll be bringing artist perspective today.
Thank you. Maya?
Hi everyone, I'm Mara George. I am the creative director of Villages in Action. We are a rural touring scheme that works in Devon. More from me in a bit.
Thank you. Emily?
Hi, I'm the Rural Touring Dance Initiative Coordinator, also a bit of a mouthful. Yeah, and I'll be telling you more about the dance project and kind of all things dance related.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, so a little bit about the National Rural Touring Forum. It's been going for 25 years and it was set up to serve the rural touring sector, which was just sort of, it wasn't emerging because it's been around forever, as long as touring companies have been touring and performing, but it was kind of constituting itself into something that can create tours 25 years ago, and that was with the schemes, which are the kind of programming development hubs who or kind of almost like artistic directors of the rural touring network. And since then we've been regularly funded by the Arts Council for quite a long time, a good few rounds, and we're now a sector support organisation. So we are a membership organisation and we have lots of different members. We've got all the schemes across the country. We've got promoters, and we'll go into what a promoter does soon. We've got artists, touring companies, different venues, festivals and things like that. So it's a very lively network. And there's probably, there's almost, I think, about 3,000 shows presented across the UK every year through rural touring. And although it is rural, it is also urban. So it's about how it's connected with the communities. So it is kind of driven by the community rather than by the artist of where or the venue. It's more driven by those residents in those rural or small towns and what they would like to see. So that's part of what makes it unique. And rural touring is known for village hall touring, but also it's much more than that. Community centres, pubs, outdoor spaces, libraries, anywhere you can think of, it happens. A little bit like Fringe in that way, but in a kind of rural setting. And what the NRTF does is support this ecosystem and enable kind of peer-to-peer networking and support and sharing. And we run a conference every year. So we have a 3-day conference every year where we invite schemes and artists and venues and promoters all to be in one space together to kind of strengthen the sector and learn about and see shows and learn about the issues that we're facing at the moment and takeaways. So the kind of system is set up because there's so many barriers to those living in the countryside and to rural spaces that have access to live theatre and culture. And those barriers can be anything from financial barriers, time barriers, distance barriers, but also social barriers that some people in rural organisation or rural residents will feel less comfortable walking into a large kind of creative arts institution, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, than those who are used to living in urban areas. So we're all about kind of levelling out opportunity and access to top quality creative experiences and taking shows to those who are living in rural areas. It's a very exciting network, and I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone here about the different nuances of rural touring. And also at the end, there will be time for questions. So we're here for an hour. We've got 50 minutes left. So I'm going to hand over to Maya from Villages in Action. Thanks, Maya.
Amazing. Thanks, Holly. So there's loads to talk about, and it's quite hard to know exactly sort of what the most important thing is. But I thought what I'd do is talk about things from our perspective. So as Holly was just saying, we are one of those schemes. So we are a rural touring scheme, and we support primarily volunteer residents of rural communities to engage in live and creative cultural activity. So we do this in a number of ways, and we have 4 distinct strands of work. But probably our most well-known strand of work is rural touring and participation. So we work across 5 districts in Devon: East, West, Mid Devon, the South Hams and Teignbridge, for anyone who knows the areas. And we don't cover any of the cities. So for anyone who knows Devon, the county is bookmarked by Exeter to the east and Plymouth to the west. We sort of work in all the bits in between, apart from North Devon. That's our brilliant partners at Beeford cover that area. So yes, we support volunteer promoters to bring performances of theatre, music, dance, circus, spoken word, storytelling, puppetry, poetry to rural spaces. We work on a rolling programme, and we work with artists to be able, we offer artists a chance to apply to be part of our menu at any point in the year. This is quite different to how a lot of other rural touring schemes work, but essentially the menu. This is how most rural touring schemes support the volunteer promoters. So we create a menu of shows and participatory activity that we share with our network of promoters. Normally, it kind of spans a certain period of time, but that can be anything from 2 months up to, we're currently doing an artist call out for the next 18 months. So it can kind of cover any sort of period. We at Villages in Action, we spend time curating this menu to ensure that there are a range of options available for those volunteer promoters. So we think about things like diversity of art forms, genres, as well as things like pricing and so on. We want to make sure that there's something for everybody. When artists apply to be on our menu, we ask for all of the information that you can give us, basically, about the show and what the offer might be, the workshop offer, if you have one. So we ask for things like marketing materials, age, suitability, space and technical requirements, all the things that we need to know to then pass that information on to our promoters. Alongside this information, we also like to learn more about things like access and dietary requirements, as well as accommodation needs. And these might feel like kind of intrusive questions, but the reality is that rural touring is pretty unique because artists tend to be welcomed by the whole village or the whole area of a particular town. So a alongside some delicious home cooking and the opportunity for artists to stay with local residents overnight. It's a community feel. That's absolutely what we're trying to support, and you know, that might not always be what artists are looking for, but that's absolutely what we're offering. Sorry. Oh, thanks, Carol. Okay, so artists apply to be a part of the menu. For us, they use an online application system called Eventatron. Some of you might be familiar with that. It's a system that's used by a lot of festivals. And this keeps everything in one place for us. It reduces the amount of emails that we send out and receive. Other rural touring schemes use email-based application systems. And the important thing I think here to note is that each scheme is unique. What we're looking to offer on our menu may be very different to what our neighbouring rural touring scheme is looking to programme on their menu. So what I would say is make sure you read the specific guidelines and guidance for every scheme that you want to apply to be a part of. I think the thing to say that's really important about schemes is that we know our counties and we know our promoters. We spent years nurturing relationships with them. So we will often make recommendations, you know, to the promoters. Ultimately, as I said earlier, it's up to them to make their own decisions about what they programme for their own communities. But most of them will take a recommendation from us. So the more information that we can receive from artists about what to expect, the better. We do try and get along to see as many shows as we can, but of course we're based rurally as well, so that brings its own challenges. You know, it might be a 3-hour round trip for me to pop to see a 45-minute piece of children's theatre, so just something to bear in mind. But we do love getting invitations to see performances, works in progress, all of that kind of thing, and that's a really important part of it for us as well, is seeing as much work as possible. But as I said, because we are in a rural community, that can be quite difficult. So anything you can send that's filmed in some way, either kind of full shows or trailers, kind of at a very minimum, those things really help us to make our decisions. We do our best to secure consecutive dates, so that might be important. Say if there was an artist who was wanting to tour for in our sake, say they were coming down from the north of England or Scotland, we would do our best to, you know, to programme a number of dates in one, because we understand that you know, it can be expensive to tour. So we will try and work with artists to do that as much as, you know, is possible. And I think the other thing to say is we do always receive many more applications than we can programme. So just bear that in mind. It doesn't mean just because we don't, you know, say yes to kind of one particular application, you know, do keep trying. We run regular programs, so that's a really important thing to say, I think. A word about the venues. So our venues are diverse, and we work with promoters who sometimes programme for a village hall that seats 30 people and perhaps has a tiny little stage or has no stage at all. Or we might work with a promoter who's programming work for a 300-seater town hall. And as Holly said, as well as things like barns, orchards, allotments, libraries, schools, on the street, you know, anywhere, village greens, anywhere we can think of. Rural touring is really exciting, and these networks, as Holly has said, exist all over the country. A little word about the promoters and kind of why, well, what we have heard from promoters and about why they get involved. So they have a number of reasons for getting involved, and those are very individual to each promoter. It might be because they're retired. This is, you know, quite a common thing. People who have perhaps have a real love and a passion for arts and live performance, and they, you know, they want to see more of it. So they program it for their own, you know, for themselves to enjoy, as well as, you know, the rest of their village and their friends. But it can also be around, it provides really key points of social interaction, I would say. Yes, it's for the people of the village, but it does also bring people in from outside, maybe from neighbouring towns or neighbouring villages. So it's a brilliant way of getting people together. and having a nice time. So they might be thinking about their own well-being, supporting that, or they might be parents, for example, who have young children, and they want to make sure that their young children are exposed to fantastic live performance, and maybe they don't want to drive that 3-hour drive to get to the local, their nearest theatre. That's kind of what we're talking about. So this is for us, and why we're doing it at Villages in Action. It's all about the arts being more democratic. We're doing lots of work around working with groups of promoters. Who gets to decide what work is programmed. There's this kind of a slight misconception, I think, that the urban places are where all the exciting work gets made, where everything happens. But if any of you are from rural backgrounds yourself, you'll know that that's absolutely not the case. It's just that you might have to head to those urban centres to secure more work. But the rural touring is here to support work that doesn't happen in urban centres, and we think it's really, really important. We want to make sure that, again, why are promoters doing it? They want to make sure that their villages, their towns are vibrant places, that they're active places, that they're inclusive places, and that rural communities don't really get left behind. That's kind of quite an important part of it, I think, that they are a part of the conversation. And as we know, a lot of arts output, as I say, comes from those urban centres. So it's kind of pushing up the rural agenda a little bit more and making sure that people are understanding what it's like to live in these parts of the UK. It can be challenging, so rural audiences are small but mighty, and I hope that you will think about them next time that you are creating a show. We would love to hear from anyone who's thinking about touring work. I'm not sure I've kind of covered everything, but those are all the notes that I had made. I'm sure some questions will come up a bit later, but hopefully that's given you a bit of a sense of what we're about as a scheme, and ways for you to engage with us.
Thank you, Maya. I think there's some great synergies with rural touring artists and fringe artists as well, who are prepared to tour into unusual small spaces, sometimes small spaces anyway. And talking of artists, I'm going to hand over to Hattie, who's going to talk about rural touring from an artist's perspective. Thanks, Hattie.
Hi everyone. So as Holly mentioned, I am an artist as well as working for NRTF. So with NRTF, I have been doing marketing and comms and admin, but my role's moving over to helping our members more and focusing on our membership to make sure that they're really looked after. And outside of NRTF, I am a puppeteer and a performer with my own theatre company. And we have done quite a bit of rural touring. We also do indoor touring to sort of bigger, more traditional venues. But since 2017, we started doing a lot of outdoor rural touring. And we started doing that with Applause, who are another scheme, who are brilliant. And I mean, we've kept doing it. We sort of started it slightly by accident, in that we made a giant puppet and we took it to an event, which was Derby Fest Day many years ago. And the audiences just loved it so much that we got all these questions. Do you have a show? Is there a show that goes with it? Is there a workshop that goes with it? So we ended up developing it into a show that we could take on the road, and have just had a great time with that, and then have since created a second outdoor touring show and have kept doing it every year, and it's got more and more busy. And actually, even during COVID, because lots of, not that I want to mention COVID, but here it is, because of the restrictions around indoor performances, it meant that we were still able to reach audiences and go out and take work to people, which was really good for us as artists, for our well-being, and to keep our work going, but also really important for audiences to still have access to that with our outdoor shows. So some of the benefits that I've found through rural touring and really enjoy is that every single event we go to, we meet very wonderful people, and they're always so happy to have us. It's always really exciting to meet people from all kind of walks of life in all different communities. You know, it's not the same event every time. It's always different. It could be a community fair, it could be a bigger festival, it could be anything really. And so we go along, we meet these communities, and we kind of immediately feel part of that community, which is quite a different experience to indoor touring, or should I say city, not rural touring, because a lot of rural touring is also indoors. But even that experience with that we've had with rural touring, it's just slightly more carefree and easygoing in many ways, so you can rock up and really be part of the community that you're joining, and really make a difference to those people. And that's one of the other things that we really love, is that a lot of the time the audiences that we go to won't have seen anything like it before, especially with our giant puppets. It's a new experience, it's eye-opening, and you really feel the impact. It's very kind of instant because they're right in front of you. There isn't like a load of lights on you, even when you're doing an indoor venue or a village hall. There's very little gap between you and the audience, so you get really quick, instant feedback from your audiences, and you immediately know whether they're having a good time, or whether they're not, and then you adjust what you're doing. Hopefully they are. So yeah, it's really exciting to kind of be in that space. We also offer wraparound activities with our work, which I think is quite a good tip actually. If you can think of a workshop that would go with your show, whatever that show is. So even if it's not a theatre show and you're maybe doing music or even dance, if you can come up with a workshop that ties into the content, then it makes it a lot easier for the schemes to sell, to the venues, to the promoters, and it makes it easier. It makes it more of a whole event for the audiences, because our rural touring shows are half an hour, so it's not a big thing, but we want to give a full experience. So we have wraparound activities, we have workshops, and we can kind of adapt those to whoever's there. And as already mentioned, the event sizes differ. Sometimes we'll only have a handful of people in the audience. Sometimes we've had a couple of hundred on occasion, which happens a bit more, I think, at outdoor events, because anyone can just walk up and start watching, which is one of the joys. And it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how big your audience is, because as long as there's one person there who is engaged and enjoying it, you know that you've made a difference to that community that day. And you feel it so instantly that it really doesn't matter. In terms of taking work on the road, I'm just being conscious of time, but in terms of taking work on the road, some sort of top tips I would say is think about the tourability of your set. Think about how easily you can pack it down, take it out of the van, put it up, like not needing to have loads of tools and loads of power. So we have battery powered speakers. We don't tour with any lights because we're always outside, but if you were going to go into village halls or indoor venues, you would want to think about just taking some simple lights with you, and just really think about, like, what do you actually need? You don't need to have the full set with all of the walls and all of the boxes and all of the props. Like, if you don't use it, don't put it in the van, is kind of how I would go with it. And get together a good tour pack. Just list out your simple information, what you need in terms of space, how many people are coming. There's some resources on the NRTF website around this and what you might need to put in a tour pack. But that just instantly makes things easier for schemes and venues and promoters. And get some good pictures or videos if you can. Even, they don't have to necessarily be a professional photo shoot. It could just be something that somebody does on their iPhone or whatever, just to give audiences an idea of what they're coming to, and to give the venues and the schemes an idea of what they're sharing. You can write about it as much as you want, but visuals just, they get the job done quite a lot quicker. So if they're accessible for you, they're a really good way of getting the message across. I feel like I've sort of rambled on, so I'll leave it there. But yeah, if there's anything else you want me to talk about, Holly, just let me know.
I will. I'm sure you're going to have loads of questions on that, Hattie. Thank you. And I think also you've scratched the surface on some of those real nuanced needs, and really brilliant to bring up the fact that wraparound is important, especially to fringe artists, where in fringe there's a need for shows to be 60 minutes. In rural touring, it's a whole night out, so people are there for the whole evening. So if it's only 1 hour, then it's not a whole evening. So they're quite used to having an interval, because that's where they make money on the bar, and that's really important to subsidize the work. But also, and the hire of the hall and things like that goes into those. But they're also really used to having kind of a second part or a first part and then the show. Like some people do cooking demonstrations, quizzes, raffles. There's all sorts of really exciting things that happen. So that was a really, really good point to come up, Hattie. But also the other unique thing, just quickly, then I'll hand it on to Emily, is one of the amazing things about rural touring is that the work is generally subsidized, and that's why there's such high quality work going into these venues, which actually it doesn't balance. So the fee that is paid to artists and the box office, for instance, the box office will very rarely ever cover the cost of the artist to get there, and everything that goes with it. So it's important to note that pretty much all rural touring is subsidised by Arts Council, local authorities and various other trusts and foundations. And that is the fee that you get generally from the schemes. Everybody operates in different ways, but that's generally how it works. Anyway, I will stop rambling on. Emily, I'm going to hand over to you to talk about the Rural Touring Dance Initiative, an amazing project that's been going for a long time now.
Hi. Yeah, so I will talk to you about the Rural Touring Dance Initiative. So basically, it's kind of a side project of NRTF. We work with 3 other partners. So we work with The Place, Take Art, who are based in the Southwest, and Highlights, who are based in the Northwest. So my role kind of within that is I cover the kind of central region of the country. But I thought, because you've heard a lot from Hattie around kind of being an artist for rural touring, I thought I'd kind of go through the process of the project as it kind of goes through the year. So we have an artist call out in August. So as mentioned by the other people on this call, we put together a menu of dance shows that are then sent out to schemes, and and it's because dance is underrepresented in rural touring, so we're really trying to boost dance in rural venues and get dance also has a bit sometimes of an odd reputation of being a bit inaccessible, or people don't really get it, or like especially contemporary dance, they're like, I don't know. So this initiative is really about kind of breaking down some of those barriers and getting dance into town halls. And you don't need a giant like 20, I'm awful with spaces, sorry, like giant stage. You can just like have a village hall, and it's like all the benefits that Hattie said are just wonderful and totally applicable for dance as well. So anyway, we have a call out for artists for the menu in August. The deadline's usually like the first week or so of September. And from there, 8 artists, 8 productions are selected to go on our menu. Then the menu is created and sent out to the schemes. As the schemes are looking over it and deciding what they might be interested in, we have a lab for the 8 artists, so they get to come and spend 3 days with us developing, kind of learning a bit more about rural touring, developing their understanding of what it is to tour dance to rural venues, and also looking at things like the wraparound activity that can be offered both kind of on the day in like together with the show, and also kind of workshops that could be done before or after, in like the days before or after. Yeah, and then then in February is usually our deadline for schemes to come back to us with which shows they're interested in. And the slight difference between this project and other rural touring is that it's also subsidized again by so we've got an Arts Council project grant that covers this project, and so the scheme will pay 50% of the artist fee and the project will pay 50% of the artist fee, meaning that we can get a bit more like stuff for the artists to be able to tour. There's a bit more money for them to be able to implement all the things they need, especially in regards to dance, which might need more equipment, more space, more time than maybe a musician who's able to come and just set up their gig. So in February, the schemes come back with the ones they're interested in, and then we get tour planning. So we try to create the most eco-friendly tour, which is sometimes quite difficult. So basically we want we don't want someone to go down to Villages in Action and then up to highlights and then back down to Descartes. We want it to make sense. A, because we like our environment and we want to reduce emissions and all that stuff. And B, that takes time, artists' time to be able to travel those long distances. And if we're kind of respecting everyone in that process, we want to create it as logical as possible. And so we, try and give all the schemes the shows that they really want, their first and second choices, and create logical tours for the artists. And so once we've got that kind of mapped out, we then look at where the gaps are, and that's where we start filling in with wraparound activity. So we start looking at who in that community, or what organizations in that community exist, and how can we tap into those groups of people to be able to make it a more meaningful experience. And also that, again, that disbanding of some of those nerves around dance and what is dance, and will we understand it? If they've done a workshop the day before with the dance artists, they're going to be like, oh, okay, I get this a little bit more than if I'd have just rocked up to a contemporary dance show. So yeah, and then we usually contract artists in June, and then for them to tour autumn and spring. So September to November, and then usually February to kind of end of May. Yeah, so that's the process. I've kind of jumped around a bit, sorry. I do that. I'm sure you'll have questions, which I'm more than happy to answer when we do questions. Is that all right, Holly? Did I?
Great, thanks, Emily.
Okay,
I
cool.
think you picked up on something that's quite important there, which is the lead-in time, and to being programmed, and that kind of initial introduction to actually getting on the stage can be quite a long process, and that's because there's lots of different decision makers involved, and processes and things like that happening, so it can be a bit longer. Perhaps it's not like Fringe where you sign up and take part, and that can be like 6-8 months in advance. It can be up to a year, or even longer in some cases. So you can approach schemes with plans and ideas and concepts and things like that as well, and some of them commission and help do development with you, and also quite a lot of schemes do lots of like the lab that Emily was talking about. There are schemes across the country who do similar things and training, and support. There are lots of support mechanisms and resources when you approach schemes. Everybody's really friendly, but they do get a lot of email traffic. So if you don't get responses from emails, then call them, and everybody speaks to everyone. So everyone knows each other, which is really nice. And also, if you're really interested in rural touring, then the conference is a really great place to come. And our members, our artist members, I think it's only £25 a year to be an artist member. You can get access to artist bursaries, and things like that. And also you get to kind of submit applications to our ballyhoos, which are pitch ups, and showcasing opportunities and presenting of work opportunities that might be out there as well. So there are ways in which you can connect with the rural touring community, and it's really lovely, and everyone is really friendly and welcoming. I think we're going to have some questions. If anyone's got any questions, put your hand up and let us know. But it leaves me to sort of say there is a real difference between touring into villages and smaller communities than there is into urban. And somebody put it really perfectly, which was, if you are in a black box theatre in a town, then it's the artist who is inviting the audience in to that show, and the audience have made a decision to book that one ticket to see you. But in a village, in a rural touring environment, it's the community that is invited the artist in to perform for them, and that is a really big and unique way of looking at it. It sort of nails it really of what the difference is. Has anyone got any questions for anyone here? We've bamboozled you with.
Amazing. Sorry, I've been running back and forth with some printer drama, but if anyone can unmute and go for it, or if you want to drop it in the chat and we can read it for you, either or. So.
Hi, I have a question, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabriella. I'm doing a show at Brighton Fringe called The Art of a Damaged Soul. My question basically is about touring a show that has quite heavy content. So basically, in summary, my show is a comedy show in parts, and in other parts it's very inspirational, very motivational, but there are some scenes that contain very heavy material, and it explores mental health and the mental health crisis that we're in, and it is based off my poetry book. And I guess my question is, it might seem like a silly question, but is it okay to still tour this sort of content rurally? Do they mainly on your menus look for super light-hearted stuff, because this is the first time that I'm kind of learning about rural touring. So yeah, about content matter, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
makes loads of sense. Is it all right to jump in? Can you hear me all right? Yeah. So what I would say is, I would say most people looking for work do want a good night out. That's what they're looking for, is a good night out. My definition of a good night out might be very different to your definition of a good night out, you know? So I think absolutely it's okay to do all that work, and absolutely we want to have a kind of real, you know, diverse set of shows to offer people. One of the things we're trying to do at Villages in Action is really think about who is making those decisions, you know, within those communities. We want more younger people making some of those decisions. You know, we want it's really important that every voice within those communities kind of, you know, is heard and represented. So it might be, yes. So what I would say is absolutely you should consider rural touring, and in the same way that you would in kind of more urban settings, you know, you'd think about what those warnings were, you'd think about your marketing copy and how you're talking about that show. You know, life is full of the kind of darker and the lighter, and I think shows that do that and are able to communicate that through their kind of copy will do really, really well. You know, because people living in rural places are just the same as people living in urban places. You know, they have a lot of the same concerns, a lot of the same human issues, you know, so that they're not different kinds of people. Yeah, I think it's making sure you get that balance across, you get that comedic element. It sounds like from what you told me about your show that you don't shy away from it. You're not trying to sort of hide it and say, oh, it sort of touches on these themes. Absolutely not. It's really clear, you know, make that front and center. And yes, we have a diverse range of promoters who are looking for a diverse range of work. So I mean, that's what I would say. I don't know if anyone feels any differently in the NRTF team, but from a scheme perspective, yeah, absolutely.
I was just gonna maybe add, and you can tell me what you think as well. You, in terms of wraparound activity, you might want to consider something that happens after the show that supports anyone who's found it difficult in any way. And it doesn't need to be, you know, it doesn't need to be something that puts a dampener on the evening, for example, but of quite a positive, like maybe a discussion session or something that brings that out and makes it feel like a safe environment to tie in with that. I'm not sure, like I've not done it, but that would be an idea.
Yeah, I think because the show is based off of my books as well. I'm an author, and so my plan is to take this around schools and universities and everything, and rural communities like village halls and town halls and libraries. And I have got workshops already in place because I already go to schools just separately to kind of teach, and it's very much giving them the support. And I've teamed up with like Mind and Samaritans and Survivors Network.
Perfect. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. That really helps.
Just to add in that, what you were saying about those links to sort of, you know, charities or organisations that are supporting that kind of work, they might be based in the urban centres. They might be based, you know, for example, in Devon, they might be in Exeter or in Plymouth, but they're absolutely serving the whole community. So that idea about how you might make some links with some either national or local charities, you know, if you're able to get that and you've done a little bit of research about who those might be, or, you know, we know that most of those people will not be based, you know, rurally, those organizations, but the people that they're supporting are all over. So, you know, yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions about rural touring? Typing anything into the chat. Okay, so if there's no more questions, does anyone else want to say anything else about rural touring?
Do you want me to talk about membership, Holly, or?
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, so back to NRTF. So I've got two hats on here. I didn't say before, by the way, my theatre company is called Smoking Apples Theatre. But with NRTF, we have a really great membership offer that supports artists, schemes, venues, promoters to be part of rural touring. So in whatever way you're coming to this, I'm sort of guessing that most people here are artists, but people watching, I'm hoping there's a bit more variety as well. So we have different rates for depending on what your income is, depending on sort of what you do. And as Holly said, it's only £25 to be an artist member. And with that, there's a huge amount of resources available that are really comprehensive and cover a wide range of areas of rural touring, lots of information. And there will be a new platform coming in time as well. I don't want to say too much about that, but there's more coming as well. But on top of that, it's a really great network. You can post to our discussion boards, you can talk about the shows you're doing. And if you are able to come to the conference, you can meet schemes and other artists there and just kind of get a better idea of what's going on, what's happening. And, you know, if you've got any questions about it, or if you want to know more about membership, have a look at our website or drop me an email on admin@nrtf.org, I think. Just check that one. .org.uk. There we go. And yeah, like we want to diversify. We want to encourage more people into rural touring, to give access for artists and for communities to see high quality work. And what Holly said about communities inviting you in, it really is something special to be able to be part of that, and you feel very invited. So we kind of want to make it the best for everyone that we can.
Brilliant. What a great place to end. Thank you, Hattie. And thank you to Maya and Emily as well, and to Cameron and the Brighton Fringe for having us.
Thank you.
And I hope your shows are going amazingly and you're getting out and seeing other things as well. I'm coming down on Friday and Saturday, not tomorrow, the following Friday and Saturday. So I'm going to be coming down and seeing what's going on. So drop us a line if you want to as well. And thank you so much for coming and hearing more about the amazing world of rural touring. And I hope to see you in it at some point soon. Thanks for coming.
Thanks everyone for coming along. Have a good evening. Let's end this Zoom call and let's that's gonna. I've slept for 2 hours. I'm so sorry. I'm breaking. I can't. But well done, guys. You nailed it. Thank you.